What happens if there's a mass dumping of dollars? It's that moment where people say, oh man, I need to do something because everything is collapsing. Where do I go? There isn't enough product out there to facilitate a rush when everyone wakes up.
This is Dunnigan Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver broker for Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized private service from one of the oldest and best companies in the business. For fastest service, just call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 888-81-LIBERTY. And either I or one of my sons and fellow brokers will call you back as soon as we can and understand your needs. Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We have a returning guest. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. He's joining us for this weekly market update this Tuesday, August 31st, 2021. Andy, thanks for coming back on this last day of August.
Time keeps flying, doesn't it? It's crazy that the year is already 3/4 over just about, but always good to see you, Dunnigan. Thanks for having me.
We are looking forward to your insights into market internals. I know you and I were just talking about, I guess, when you're talking about the climbing the foothills of a mountain, there's the little baby steps, and all of a sudden it gets to be like, whoa, the landscape is changing, and there's big steps coming on. People have talked to me on an ongoing basis, and you hear them all day as well, asking about availability, about supply and demand, and you're seeing a shift in the type of demand requests that are coming in and the indicators of near-term, future demand. Can you talk to us about what's changing in the landscape of demand that might change this whole game dramatically for all of us?
Yeah, and it centers around an expansion into an awakening into a class of consumers who are able to make very large purchases, who never thought about buying gold before. Frankly, a class of people that by and large in 30 years I haven't worked with. A class of people who call and place 7-figure orders and don't even ask any questions. Just, can you get it for me? And a class of people who never bought gold before, but just know that they want to own it and don't really care about the things that most people would care about. It's almost kind of shocking doing business with these people as if they've been here before, put it to you that way, and when they haven't. I've been dealing with a couple of groups that have not only placed very significant orders, but plan on placing very significant orders in the very near future. And they're real. And I was having a conversation with my father the other night. And, I said, Dad, I want to talk about this. I said, but at some point, people question your motivation. They think that you're just trying to be a purveyor of doom and gloom and fear mongering and push people into making a decision that they wouldn't otherwise make on their own volition, because you're trying to inject this urgency that isn't real. But Dunnigan, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, when you asked me a few hard questions, you know me well enough to know that I am not that way. I am not somebody who is a fearmonger. In fact, I've always tried to stay away from speaking that way and focus on gold and silver as wealth, not as a fear hedge. But let me just put it to you this way. The conversation went down the road like this. I said, these guys are talking tens of millions of dollars and more, bigger. These are some investment organizations that have massive amount of money in equities and cryptocurrencies. They've already spent a whole bunch of money and plan on liquidating a very large portion of their holdings in November. It's already been portrayed to the entire group. I'm getting phone calls every day from a group of these people asking me questions, how to set up account and what have you. And I said to my father, I said, these guys are talking upwards ends of $100 million between their whole group. And my dad said to me, Andy, I listen to the things that you say on Dunnigan's show and on others, and I believe you. He says, and I think you believe yourself, more importantly, which I do. And he says, but have you really followed this logic all the way through? I said, of course I have. What do you mean? He says, no, I don't think you have, Andy. I really don't. I said, okay, well, what do you mean? He says, what are you going to do when the phone rings one day and someone says, I want a $50 million order or a $100 million order? What are you going to do? Are you going to try your darndest to fill it and then just tell everyone else that there's no product available and close shop? These are the type of things that I think could happen just like that, and I've talked about for a long time on your show how I thought product availability would define the market, or lack of product availability. And the reason I've always felt that way is because for years, when the interest was a fraction of what it is right now, we would run into problem right around this time of the year, or maybe a month from now, as we get near Halloween, where the mints run out of product. And the standard statement is, well, we've ceased the current year product, we're preparing for next year. Remember when they shift from type 1 to type 2 and there was no product for 3 months? That's what they do. They retool, whatever they do, they run out of the allocation for that year and they're preparing for next year. And there's a vacuum of time there where there's no product. And I always would think to myself, how the heck does this even happen? Who's buying it all? This was when, you could hear crickets at 3 PM in this industry, when people just wanted real estate and equities and bonds in this country, not precious metals. I've lived through that period, and yet the mints would run out of product. And that's where I coined the phrase, the model of inefficiency. I mean, they are, if there's tepid demand globally and they run out of product. I always thought, what happens when it really gets crazy? I never envisioned a market that is already as crazy as it is. And it's with amazement, actually, that I find where we are right now has actually been fairly flush with product. Haven't had to worry. Now we're beginning to see it, as you and I were talking about. Pre-1965 silver, which is usually as available as anything, is now as rare as hen's teeth. You can't find it. It's almost impossible to find in any quantity. And this is something that can't be reproduced. It's the beginning. And I think to myself, as you and I talked about the number of 7-figure orders that we've seen lately, what happens when 7 becomes 8? What happens when, the very, very wealthy people start to become concerned? One of the things that will awaken people is that the 3 pillars of wealth, stocks, bonds, and real estate, are all at all-time highs, inversely positioned against interest rates. And what is that seminal moment? We talked last week about Saudi Arabia signing a deal with Russia for mutual military cooperation. What does that mean in the face of the United States holding its petrodollar status because of our promise to protect the Saudi kingdom, who just signed a contract for military cooperation with Russia, who then went 2 days later and signed the exact same thing with Nigeria, 2 of the biggest oil-producing countries in the world? Does that mean it's the beginning of the end for the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency, something I've been saying I believe will happen? Is it the crack in the seam that turns into something much bigger? And in my gut, I believe it is. I believe it is the beginning of the end of the dollar as a singular world reserve currency, when our linchpin of that phenomenon is the petrodollar. And that petrodollar status was simply based upon protection and military cooperation with the Saudis and to protect the kingdom. After they've seen the way that we have treated our allies in Afghanistan, do you think there's a coincidence? I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But striking a deal with a military superpower like Russia, who's aligned with China and the BRICS nations, China is already, as we talked about through the Belt and Road Initiative, building this huge alliance in Africa, and now Russia, their partner in all of this, signs a contract for military cooperation with Nigeria, another massive oil-producing country. Are the pegs being put in place for us to wake up one morning and see the Saudis say, you know what, we've decided to issue oil in various currencies, the yuan, the ruble, and the the euro, as an example. What happens to the dollar overnight? And are all three of these pillars of wealth, stocks, bonds, and real estate, which are all inversely correlated interest rates, what happens if there's a mass dumping of dollars? It's that moment where people say, oh man, I need to do something because everything is collapsing. Where do I go? It's that moment when, like the old Hemingway statement, wow, how'd you go broke? Little by little, then all at once. Well, what happened to all the supply? It started to disappear little by little like junk silver, and then bang, all at once. It's going to happen. And I just want people to understand that as God is my witness, I truly believe that this is going to happen. There isn't enough product out there to facilitate a rush when everyone wakes up. Because as I always say on your show, Rick Rule talks about 1/2% to this day of allocation to precious metals.
Yeah, he's actually saying, and I was thinking that number was going to have to start increasing, and you had spoken about that a little bit because we saw such robust demand over the past year, and yet now he's saying less than 0.5% of investable net worth, and that's because there's been such an increase of the bubble in the other options of that. Yep.
Right. And the bubble, which has attracted all these people, is inverse to interest rate increase. But what makes interest rates go to the moon? It would be an event, a seminal event like Saudi Arabia saying, thanks for the memories. We'll still take dollars, but now anyone can buy oil with other currencies. And the massive dollar dumping that would ensue would be outrageous. Look, our allies don't trust us any longer. Our foes aren't really afraid of us any longer. They are going to embolden other countries to take steps. And I just want people to know that I believe we have never been closer. And it truly is something that has been on my mind for the last day and a half that I can't shake. Because I never took it that far. Because the biggest order I've ever done in 31 years is $11 million. It's the biggest order I've ever done at one time. For a company that's done $6 billion in sales, that doesn't seem like a lot. But I will tell you that there's more money out there now than ever before. I remember as a senior or a junior in high school when Kirby Puckett, where I was from Minnesota, signed the biggest sports contract in history of the United States at $3 million a year. And now the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills just signed like a six-year contract for $250 or $60 million with $150 million guaranteed over 6 years to play football. And the amount of money that's out there, that's obviously one very large extreme, but it wouldn't take but one or two guys like that who have that kind of wealth or greater to drain the entire industry of anything that's available. And it happens that quick. And there hasn't been incentive for people to think this way. But you look around us and you see all the things that are happening internally and externally. I think capped or with the exclamation point upon the embarrassment that is Afghanistan and the realization that maybe the U.S. isn't the best ally, I think some people are thinking. And what does that mean? How does this all translate? Anyways, I just wanted to get that out there because, I've always said that, yeah, it'll be difficult to get product, but I never really thought about what would happen when one or two people come and literally drain us of everything that we have. What do I say to those people? Do I take the order? Do I say I can't quite fill it all because I have other clients, or do I take it? It's an interesting thought experiment, but I believe it'll be one that all the online companies, all the major companies will deal with because there aren't that many of us that are substantial enough to be able to place a 7 or an 8-figure order at will. What if it's 8 or 9 figures? What happens? And I just want people to know that I truly believe that this is coming because the level of increase in 6- and 7-figure orders that I've seen over the past 2 weeks is truly extraordinary to me. Where these are things where in typical years we'd see a half a dozen in a year, and then it becomes bigger. And now all of a sudden we've done a half a dozen in a week. What happens when that becomes twice that amount or 3 times that amount? Just like that, all the things that I had been seeing in my mind's eye happen, not the way I had originally seen it, but it happened. So I wanted to bring that up. And, at least we have real genius behind President Biden and the Financial Services Committee. I read an article today that said who was it? It was AOC and a few other women on the Financial Services Committee wanted to replace Fed Chairman Powell because he wasn't. He wanted someone who would do more about climate change, and so we're focusing on the right things at least, right? Climate change and what have you, instead of the real problems. And this is all emblematic of everything that I think about, whether it be here domestically or offshore. We're a mess, and I think people are waking up to it. And I think it's going to resonate with people, especially when we see an event that will rattle the three pillars of wealth: stocks, bonds, and real estate, where for the first time are all inversely correlated to interest rates and positively correlated to each other. Where else is there to run, Dunnigan, is what I'm finally getting at. Where else is there to run?
Yeah, I wanted to underscore a couple things that you mentioned there. One was about the fact on the ground about availability of 90% silver, constitutional silver, junk silver. There were patches through the COVID year where we had difficulty, where we had plentiful silver at low premiums prior, and then it got to be hit or miss. People would call me up and say, do you have it? And I couldn't answer the question. I said, I don't know. Let me check. We had some this morning, but that doesn't say anything about this afternoon. And then it got to be for about the last quarter ago that it was back in plentiful supply again. There was that day about 2 months ago where there was none to be had. And I texted our operations team and said, what's going on? And they said, well, we had a whale come in and cleaned us out of 90% silver. And we didn't have any for like 2 weeks after. They said, we're trying to find more. And now the last 2 weeks here, we had a week and a half where we didn't have any, except some specialty items around the edges, but not the main, dimes and quarters at the lowest price point. And now I have to tell people when they call and they say, do you have 90% silver? I stop myself and I go, I don't know. Let me check, because it's a question mark.
There's one other thing to add to that too. I mean, we have like 2 bags that we had to buy at really hard price. I had 3 bags at high prices yesterday, but it's got the term junk silver, right? And in 2020, you and I did a special for under $1 over spot. That would fit the term. You're getting something very close to the melt value. Right now, it's priced higher than the Krugerrand, the Philharmonic, the Kangaroo, the Britannia. I've seen that once in 30 years. That one time I called all my clients who had junk silver and I said, trade it right now for Kangaroos. That was what was really available. And this, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is either 2008 or 2011. But I was telling people, trade your junk for premium coins and walk away with like 50 more ounces per bag. It wasn't a lot, but it was the first time I'd ever seen it where junk silver wasn't junk anymore. In fact, it was priced higher than premium. And right now it's about 60 to 75 cents above premium coins. I have never seen that before. From the page of You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, that's the beginning of it, where not only can't find it, it's priced higher than premium coins. And what would happen if one of the mints suddenly ran out of product? What would that do to the other mints, and how quickly does it spin? This is all I can think about lately.
I want to add one more anecdote on there, and I think it's a principle, it's a trend. You look at the baby boomer generation, the aging demographic, this huge wave of retirees, and you also look at home sale prices. My wife and I have been struggling in the hot, frothy market that we're in right now, unable to make a winning bid on a new home because it's so hot. So people who are selling their homes, and a lot of them they're downsizing or they're moving closer to their kids or whatever, that kind of thing. We've met so many of them. We've talked to so many of them. They're looking around and going, as you asked, where am I going to put this money? They're just not comfortable putting, and I just talked with a couple a week ago who didn't want to leave millions of dollars in the bank or that kind of thing from having sold a ranch and a home. And so this phenomenon of people who actually have had significant, lifetime slow accumulation by paying off their mortgage and that kind of thing, and then home prices being inflated by the recent drop in interest rates, are now selling out. And they're looking to where are they going to protect those funds into? So this phenomenon of baby boomer retirees looking for a place. So even before you get to the scale of the 8-9 figure guys, you're looking at these people who have, in fact, 7 figures that they want to protect. And I had the first order of that scale, last week in my entire time as a broker. So I'm seeing the same thing in my little corner of the world that you're describing there.
That's because people trust you, that they're calling you with that. And, that's admirable. That's fantastic. And I don't think that we've seen the end of it, because I think about it, and a lot of the people that I talk to, they say the same thing. We just don't know where to put our money. And when you talk about bail-ins and gating and, money creation that is watering down the value of cash exponentially, and markets at all-time highs, and all of the things that would make someone think, where do I put my money? Look, it's been a great run in equities. I went to dinner with a gentleman the other night who lives in my neighborhood. He's very, very, very successful financial advisor. And, I typically don't take people down a rabbit hole, especially that I just recently met. But this is a guy who the top 0.1% in terms of success in the financial services industry. And he told me, that his model has been, every time it gets hit, just buy more. And it's worked. I mean, God bless him, it's worked, because we've had an accommodating Fed that continues to foster an environment where that works until it doesn't. And, you think about people like this who are fully invested in equities at the all-time highs against the lowest level of interest rates in human history, the greatest amount of debt, and for the first time in the last 80 years, people are looking at the United States cross-eyed. And what does all of this mean? What are the alliances that are happening across the globe that are usurping the dollar and our interests? And I think it all comes back to the old saying that return on money is great, but where we are, return of money might be more important. And I think we are going to hit a period of time here real soon, especially now that we're in September. September, you can almost mark on your calendar as the time when the metals prices start to heat up. Almost invariably, it happens right at Labor Day. And, you got Europe coming back. But all of the things that are happening in concert with this, whether it be, Delta variant, or whether it be things that are happening geopolitically or politically, or monetarily, all of these things start to kind of come into focus right about now. My guess is things get really interesting the last quarter of the year. From here forward, I think things are going to get exponentially more interesting than they were in the summer. That would be my guess. I hope to some degree I'm wrong. But what does interesting mean? Well, there's the old curse, Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And I truly believe these are going to start to get interesting done again. And I don't speak this way. It's a feeling that I have to get out, because I'm seeing it and I feel it around me with supply, with availability, I had yesterday, I swear to you, I had 75 to 100 phone calls and 300 to 400 emails yesterday. And people out there will probably text in and say, yeah, he was emailing me at 1:30 in the morning last night. It hasn't been like this for a few months. And all of a sudden it's back with a vengeance like it was in 2020. So I want to say to people, look, precious metals are wealth. They're not an investment. And if you've been thinking about buying them, please consider buying them sooner than later, because I'm concerned there will come a time when we just can't get them for you. And honest to God, I truly believe that. Yeah,
well, that's where I wanted to remind us of something you told us in the beginning of how your dad and you started Miles Franklin from nothing, and that you also talked to us about the little guy rule that you got in accounting training, and the whole thing there is about how the big money, the big informed players tend to position themselves first and the little guy last. Here we are trying to tell ordinary people with whom we have worked loyally and faithfully, is like, guys, we're seeing this storm coming. We're seeing these waves coming, and they're bigger than what we've seen before. And this is an opportunity, I think, and a service that we're trying to provide to ordinary people to perceive ahead of time. My whole history with Reluctant Preppers since 2013 was, how can we see what's coming before it gets here? you hear the train whistle blowing, you see it's coming down the track, you're on the track, you got to get off the track. So anyway, how can we see this stuff before it hits our families?
Yeah, that's just, and I know, a lot of people are just cynics, and I get it. We live in a cynical time where finding people you can trust is hard. I don't need to sit up here and go out on a limb and say this stuff publicly, to be lambasted by people saying he's just trying to fearmonger. I get it. There'll be people who believe that. I got to look myself in the mirror every night. I got to look at my children. I got to go to bed and try to sleep at night. I don't do that stuff. I don't. And I've never felt this way in 31 years. And I think we are closer to that happening than ever. And when my dad said that to me, I'm like, wow, you kind of blew my mind. Like, I say this all the time. He's like, and that's what he meant by, I don't think you're really thinking it through. Because I do believe it will be what defines this market. But to think that one person could do that, it could literally, any major company in this country could be blown up by one person with no product. And then what happens? And then if you realize that this is a global phenomenon, that people globally are waking up to it, what happens? You're not going to be able to start getting product from around the world. And so anyways, I've always said this is one of the things that defines a bull market in metals. There is nothing like it because there's no secondary market because people are not selling for a profit. And then what? What do you do with that profit? Where are you going? So they hold on and they grip tighter, and that's coming. So that's really my central focus, done again, is to help people best I can, but to warn them that there are things that they're not thinking about that I think about that will, potentially put this industry on ice for a while. And I hope people give that some thought. So that's really my
I wanted to share two comments from viewers that were sent in ahead of this interview that ring true with what you just said. Floyd Rossini says, thank you, Dunnigan and Andy, for your most truthful perspective. Andy, I'm always surprised by the amount and variety of silver coins, bars, constitutional and sovereign, available online for immediate delivery. All the bigs have lots. Where is it coming from? How are the private mints getting so much silver to provide if there's a shortage? Is there really a shortage, or is there more to it than we know about? And I wanted to tag on that myself, just my last conversation with Australian economist John Adams saying, and again, he's talking about big fish changes, structural changes coming in their market that he's seeing, and he says things could change really fast for them as well.
Yeah, no, I think the comment is fair. But what is a lot? What is a lot? A few hundred million, a billion? I don't know what's a lot. We just left $90 billion worth of military equipment in Afghanistan. We were spending $140 or $150 million a day for 21 years. That's a lot. What you see in this industry seems like a lot because, as Rick Rule says, we're less than 0.5%. We're the pimple on the elephant's rear end. It seems like a lot, but it's not a lot when you factor all the money into it. And overnight, it's gone. If there's enough interest by the mainstream. Yeah, there's been a lot of interest since 2020 that has expanded, and that pimple has grown into a cyst. For lack of a better explanation. I mean, it's not just a little pimple. It's bigger. It's more noticeable. I see more and more people who never bought metal before. I definitely do, but we're still nowhere near the mainstream. And talking with the financial advisor that I was with the other night, who manages over $1 billion, one of the biggest money managers in Southern Florida, he has no clue. I mean, none, zero, nor do his clients. And so, it's expanded, but it isn't permeated into the fabric of this country. And if there is a moment, and I just want to say that I think the meeting with Saudi Arabia is a whole heck of a lot bigger than people are thinking about. When the whole world reserve currency status is built upon our protection of the Saudi kingdom, and they just signed a joint military cooperation deal with Russia, who then goes the next day and does it with Nigeria. Do you see the handwriting on the wall? And then go back and look at all the things that I've been talking about: the repatriation of gold by the central banks, the reclassification of gold as a reserve asset, the rise of the others, the the linear pattern of dollar de-dollarization, of accumulation, of removal of counterparty risk. These things are happening, and put it in context now with what you see here. And every single day, it's like the game of Jenga, where you pull out a piece, push it through. One of these days, we're gonna see this Jenga tower fall. And I think what's happening in Saudi Arabia and Nigeria may be even bigger than the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative, may be even bigger than reclassifying gold, at least in terms of what it means to the U.S. dollar as the singular world reserve status currency.
It reminds me of the scene from the original Star Wars movie where there's this big Death Star and the big Empire, and they're making their huge plans and everything. And then you got the little rebellion that's these little guys, and they know how to shoot swamp rats. And so they're going to go in there and do their thing. Because we've talked with the Wall Street Silver guys several times on our channel, and they're saying, you know what? There's these big things that are going on, but we're going to take care of business at our level. This is each person, each individual, and it gets back to the preparedness thing. We're just going to take care of our individual situation because that's all we can do. We can't. These big things are such huge, overwhelming things. We don't know what's coming. It doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good, but we can do, here's what we can do at an individual level. And that's where, again, standing there on behalf of the little guy. Big JK says, this is more of a statement than a question. Andy, there are some naysayers and haters in the comments that accuse you of talking your book. May I say that I thoroughly enjoy all your interviews. It's great to have your insight and perspectives on things every week. The weekly interviews with you and Dunnigan are top notch and much appreciated by almost all of us. Keep them coming, guys. And a strong and a stay strong fist there. So anyway.
Well, thank you. And like I said to you before we started this, and I said to my dad, how do I say this stuff where people won't accuse me of this? How do you say something that you believe in your soul, that you really want people to know, that doesn't come across as being self-serving? It's ironic. I mean, I get it. I understand it. I wish it wasn't the case. Like I said, I don't need to do this. I don't need to put myself out there and get lambasted with, like sitting on one of those dunking tanks. I don't need to do that. But I do think it's important enough for me to be honest about it. And I won't take joy in being right. I just want people to know that it's coming, and I see it.
That's the thing, and that's the same thing with preparedness. There is no prepper whom I've spoken with who looks forward with actual pleasure at the thought of, I'm gonna have my stash of fuel, food, water, stuff while those around me are starving and impoverished, and my neighbors are digging in the dumpsters. It's not about that. It's about trying to at least do the small things that we can, bloom where we're planted, and try to be prudent, try to be responsible, try to be proactive, try to take the necessary steps so that we and our families can have a future. That's what it's about.
It's funny, I was talking to another client the other day, and that topic came up, and he said, "You must just be killing it." I said, "Yeah, business has been pretty good," but I said, there's no joy in doing really well when the people around you ultimately won't. And there's no joy in going out and spending money or going to fancy restaurants or doing any of the things that we used to like to do all the time in this environment, or certainly far less joy. And these are all real topics. And these naysayers, I'd love to sit around a table with them, have a beer, and let them get to know me for real. And I would, love the opportunity. That's not going to happen. But thank you. I think his name was Jake, whatever his name was. Thank you very much for the nice comment. It means a lot. I get it, though. I understand where the naysayers come from. In a cynical world, I would look cynically at what I was saying, too, if I didn't know me. I get it.
There's so many more. We are not going to have time to touch on them. But this is a theme. This is a theme that comes through. I'll send you the list because it's quite impressive. We wanted to give you a chance to offer a weekly special so that those who are still interested in taking those prudent steps to take care of their families' futures have a way to do that that's affordable and still available.
Yeah, and one last point, to the guy who said, well, everyone seems to have everything. junk silver, there you go. It's beginning. It's happening. And if you can't get it, something that can't be reproduced, it's the beginning of difficulty getting product. As far as what we have to offer this week, one of the other things that you and I talked about offline is, what about the previous week's specials? Are we going to keep offering them at these good prices as long as we can? And the answer is yes, we will. We'll continue to offer those previous week's specials, the Kangaroos and the Britannias, and the Philharmonics at really, really good prices, the same prices that we were offering them at. And this week it will be the Krugerrand, the South African 2021 Krugerrand at $3.65 over the price of silver in any quantity. As far as I can tell, that's as good of a price as you'll find in the country. It's an amazing coin. When it first came out a couple of years ago, they were priced extraordinarily high because since the early 60s, the Rand Mint in South Africa, the first mint to make 1 ounce gold coins, has been making gold coins every year, but wasn't but for just a few years ago when they started to make silver coins. They're really neat. They come in boxes of 500 and tubes of 25. They're one of the 6 major mints of the world. Good choice. Love them. And at $3.65, that's as inexpensive as they've been in 18 months. So we'll continue to lower premiums as long as we can until, in my mind's eye, they start to tick back up. But for now, I think we're in the sweet spot. And this is as good of a value as we've seen all year in 1 ounce premium coins.
Some people ask which mints have a picture of Queen Elizabeth on the back and which don't. This is one that does not, and that matters to some people. So
I never really understood that until recently. More people say that to me since 2020 than you can imagine. If I had a dollar for every time someone said that, I could probably buy a half a mint box. There are a lot of people who don't want Queen Elizabeth. The 3 coins that have the Queen on them that we sell mostly would be the Canadian Maple Leaf, the British, UK Britannia, and the Australian Kangaroo. The Philharmonic, the Eagle, and the Krugerrand do not have Queen Elizabeth. So those of you that are not particularly fond of the monarchy, this is certainly a way to get some silver and not have her likeness on the back of the coin.
Well, Andy, I'm just grateful again, as always, and our guests are, for your presence here with us on Liberty and Finance. And for those of us who have been reluctant preppers or reluctant to prep all this time, guys, there's no time like the present. And to not be the little man who's the victim, who doesn't have anything left to acquire, to protect their family because the big people have scooped it all up. It's time for us to take action. So, Andy, as always, thank you for joining us here on Liberty and Finance.
It's a great pleasure. I look forward to seeing you next week, my friend. You stay well, and we'll talk soon.
This is Dunnigan Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver broker for Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized private service from one of the oldest and best companies in the business. For fastest service, just call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 888-81-LIBERTY. And either I or one of my sons and fellow brokers will call you back as soon as we can and understand your needs.